Marcus Chen wiped his hands on his work clothes as he walked through the busy halls of the trade station. The human colony ship Endeavor had been docked here for 3 days now, getting repairs and buying supplies. Marcus was tired after fixing the ship's main engine all morning, but he still had to attend the diplomatic meeting tonight. He did not like these formal events. Marcus preferred working with machines over talking to aliens. Machines made sense. They followed rules. Aliens, especially alien royalty, seemed to have rules that humans could never understand. The Zephyrian trade station was huge and beautiful. Everything was made from white stone and blue metal that seemed to glow. The aliens who ran this place were tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and silver hair. They moved like dancers and spoke in soft, musical voices. Marcus arrived at the reception hall just as Captain Rodriguez was giving her speech about friendship between species. He stood in the back, hoping no one would notice him. The room was full of important people from both ships. The humans looked uncomfortable in their dress uniforms, while the Zephyrians wore flowing robes covered in jewels. That was when he saw her. Princess Veltara stood near the center of the room, surrounded by other Zephyrians. She was taller than the others, with silver hair that reached her waist and eyes the color of deep ocean water. Her robe was pure white with blue gems that caught the light. She looked like something from a fairy tale. Marcus was staring without meaning to when she turned and looked right at him. Their eyes met across the crowded room. She smiled, and Marcus felt his face turn red. He quickly looked away and pretended to be very interested in the food table. But luck was not with him tonight. "Excuse me," came a soft voice behind him. Marcus turned around to find Princess Veltara standing there, even more beautiful up close. Her guards stood nearby, watching everything. "Your Highness," Marcus said, trying to remember the proper way to greet alien royalty. He gave a small bow like the captain had taught them. "Please, just call me Veltara," she said with a warm smile. "You are Marcus Chun, yes? The engineer who fixed our power grid yesterday." Marcus was surprised she knew his name. Yesterday, some Zephyrian workers had asked for help with a broken power line. Marcus had fixed it in about 20 minutes. It was not a big deal. "Yes, that's me. But it was just a simple repair job." "Simple for you, perhaps. Our engineers had been trying to fix it for days." She stepped closer, and Marcus caught a scent like flowers and ocean breeze. "You have very clever hands." Marcus did not know what to say to that. He was not good at talking to women, especially alien princesses who smelled like heaven and looked like they belonged on magazine covers. They talked for a few more minutes about ship repairs and trade routes. Veltara seemed genuinely interested in his work, asking smart questions about engine design. Marcus found himself relaxing a little. Maybe aliens were not so hard to talk to after all. Then she did something that changed everything. Veltara reached into her robe and pulled out a small crystal pendant on a silver chain. The crystal was deep blue and seemed to glow within her light. She held it out to Marcus with both hands. "I would like you to have this," she said quietly. Marcus stared at the pendant. It was clearly very valuable and probably very important. In his world, when important people gave you expensive gifts, it usually meant they wanted something in return. Something you might not want to give. "I can't accept this," Marcus said quickly, backing away. "It's too valuable. I'm just an engineer." The princes looked confused, then hurt. "But you must." "No, really. I can't take gifts from royalty. It might cause problems between our governments." Marcus was talking fast now, getting nervous. "Thank you, but no." He saw something change in her expression. The warmth in her eyes turned to something harder to read. Her guards stepped closer, and Marcus suddenly felt very aware that he was alone, far from his ship, surrounded by aliens who could probably break him in half. "I understand," the princess said slowly. Her voice was still polite, but something was different now. "Perhaps we will speak again soon." Marcus nodded quickly and escaped to the other side of the room. For the rest of the night, he could feel eyes watching him. Every time he looked around, he saw the princess or her guards somewhere nearby. They were not being obvious about it, but they were definitely keeping track of where he went. When the reception finally ended, Marcus hurried back to his ship. As he walked through the station corridors, he kept looking over his shoulder. Twice he saw Zephyrian guards in the distance, following the same path he was taking. Back in his quarters on the Endeavor, Marcus sat on his bed and tried to make sense of what had happened. The princess had offered him some kind of ceremonial gift, and he had refused it. Now she and her people seemed to be watching him. Maybe refusing the gift had been an insult in their culture. Maybe she was angry and planning some kind of revenge. Marcus had heard stories about alien honor codes and blood feuds that lasted for generations. He decided he would have to be very careful for the next few days. The Endeavor would be docked here for at least a week while repairs continued. Marcus would do his job and stay out of trouble. He would avoid the princess and her guards until his ship left this station. It seemed like a simple plan. Marcus had no idea how wrong he was about everything. He had no idea that among the Zephyrians, offering a personal crystal pendant was the highest form of romantic declaration. He had no idea that refusing such a gift was considered a challenge rather than an insult. And he definitely had no idea the princess, Veltara, had just decided he was the most interesting human she had ever met. The next morning, Marcus woke up to discover that his simple plan was going to be much harder than expected. The princess was waiting for him in the corridor outside his quarters. The chase had begun. Marcus pressed his back against the wall and held his breath. Through the small window in the maintenance door, he could see Princess Veltara walking down the corridor with two of her guards. They were moving slowly, looking into every doorway and side passage. It had been 5 days since the reception, and the princess seemed to be everywhere. Every time Marcus left his quarters, she appeared within minutes. When he went to the engine room, she found reasons to inspect nearby areas. When he grabbed lunch at the station's food court, she would sit at a table where she could watch him. At first, Marcus thought it was coincidence. Space stations were not that big, after all. But by the third day, he was sure she was hunting him. Marcus had started keeping a notebook, writing down every time he saw the princess or her guards. The patterns were clear. They knew his work schedule, his meal times, even his usual routes through the station. Someone was watching him very carefully. The worst part was that she kept trying to approach him. Yesterday, she had cornered him near the docking bays with another gift, this time a small golden statue. When Marcus refused and backed away, she had looked almost desperate. Her guards had moved to block his escape routes, but Marcus had spotted a service ladder and climbed up to the maintenance level. Now, Marcus was learning the station's hidden areas like a maze rat. He had found service tunnels that ran parallel to the main corridors. He had discovered that the waste management system had access shafts that connected to almost every section. He had even figured out the cleaning crew's schedule and learned to disguise himself with their uniforms. The princess was waiting in the corridor for another 10 minutes before giving up. Marcus waited 5 more minutes after she left, then carefully made his way to the communications center. He needed to send a message to Captain Rodriguez. "Captain, I think we might have a diplomatic problem," Marcus typed into the secure terminal. "The Zephyrian princess seems to be interested in me. She keeps following me around the station and trying to give me gifts. I'm worried I might have insulted her culture somehow." The captain's reply came back quickly. "Stay calm, Marcus. Don't do anything to make the situation worse. I'll talk to their diplomatic staff and try to figure out what's going on." But Marcus was already past staying calm. That afternoon, he decided to test his theory about being followed. He left his quarters and walked toward the station's central market, taking a complex route through 3 different levels. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, he spotted 2 Zephyrian guards shadowing him from a distance. Marcus ducked into a clothing shop and hid behind a rack of alien garments. Through the window, he watched the guards split up to cover both exits. They were definitely tracking him, and they were good at it. But humans were good at hiding. Marcus bought a hooded cloak from the confused shop owner and slipped out through the store's back entrance. The service tunnels were starting to feel like home. He had memorized which passages led where, which doors were usually locked, and which areas the cleaning crews used during different shifts. For the next 2 hours, Marcus played a game of cat and mouse through the station's hidden spaces. Every time he thought he was safe, he would spot another guard or catch a glimpse of silver hair in his peripheral vision. The princess was persistent. He had to give her that dot finally. Marcus found refuge in the most unlikely place, the station's water recycling plant. It was noisy, smelly, and definitely not the kind of place where alien royalty would want to spend time. Marcus climbed up onto a maintenance platform above the main processing tanks and settled in to wait. From his hiding spot, he could see the entrance to the plant. After about an hour, 2 guards appeared in the doorway. They looked around the smelly industrial space with obvious disgust and quickly left. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. He had found his sanctuary. Over the next few days, Marcus developed what he privately called the system. He mapped out the princess's daily routine and planned his movements to avoid her. He identified 17 different routes between his quarters and the engine room, and he never used the same one twice in a row. He learned to recognize the sound of Zephyrian boots on metal flooring and could identify their energy weapons by the faint humming they made. His human crewmates started noticing his odd behavior. "Marcus, why are you climbing out of a ventilation shaft?" asked Lieutenant Park as she found him emerging from a ceiling panel near the mess hall. I was checking the air recycling system," Marcus lied smoothly. "Just making sure everything's working properly." Park looked suspicious, but did not push the issue. Marcus was grateful that humans generally minded their own business, but the princess was getting more desperate. Her attempts to find him became more obvious and more frequent. She started showing up at his workstation during different shifts, hoping to catch him off guard. She sent gifts to his quarters, flowers, crystals, even what looked like expensive alien artwork. Marcus threw everything into storage without looking at it too closely. He was pretty sure the gifts were some kind of alien intimidation tactic. Maybe she was showing him how rich and powerful she was, making it clear that he could not hide forever. The breaking point came when Marcus discovered that she had tried to access the crew records of the Endeavor. Captain Rodriguez called him to her office with a worried expression. "Marcus, the Zephyrian princess has formally requested a meeting with you." She went through diplomatic channels this time. "Her people say it's about resolving a matter of honor." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Matter of honor?" "Captain, I think she wants to challenge me to some kind of alien duel. I must have really insulted her when I refused her gifts." "That doesn't sound right," the captain said slowly. "But I can't order you to meet with her if you don't want to. This is technically a personal matter." "Then I'm not meeting with her," Marcus said firmly. "I'll just keep avoiding her until we leave this station." Captain Rodriguez looked like she wanted to say more, but Marcus was already standing up to leave. He had made his decision. Whatever game the princess was playing, he was not going to participate. That night, Marcus made his greatest tactical error. He decided to sneak out to the observation deck to look at the stars. It was the one place on the station that felt peaceful, and he needed to clear his head. He should have known that someone as smart as the princess would eventually figure out his hiding patterns. She was waiting for him. Marcus had not slept properly in 3 days. He was running on caffeine, determination, and pure stubborn human refusal to give up. The princess had almost caught him at the observation deck, but he had managed to escape by climbing through an emergency maintenance hatch that was barely big enough for a human. Word of his escape skills was spreading through the station. Marcus overheard 2 alien traders talking about the phantom human who could disappear like smoke. A group of reptilian merchants had started a betting pool on whether the princess would catch him. Even some of the station's security guards seemed amused by the whole situation, but Marcus did not find it funny. If anything, the attention was making everything worse. Now he had to avoid not just the princess and her guards, but also curious aliens who wanted to see the famous vanishing human for themselves. He had perfected his hiding techniques to an art form. Marcus knew which ventilation shafts were big enough for him to crawl through, which service panels were rarely checked, and which storage areas were forgotten by the cleaning crews. He had learned to move through the station like a ghost, appearing only long enough to do his work, before vanishing again. The breakthrough came when he discovered the cargo handling system. The station used automated transport pods to move supplies between different sections. The pods were designed for boxes and containers, not people, but Marcus was desperate enough to try anything. Cramming himself into an empty supply pod was uncomfortable, but it worked. The automated system carried him through sections of the station he had never seen before, past security checkpoints and guard stations. For the first time in days, Marcus felt like he might actually stay ahead of his pursuers. But the princess was learning too. Marcus started noticing that her search patterns were getting smarter. She was no longer just following his old routes or checking his usual hiding spots. Instead, her guards were positioning themselves at key junction points, forcing Marcus to use more and more remote paths through the station. It was like a chess game played in 3 dimensions, with the entire station as the board. The situation became even more complicated when other species got involved. Marcus was hiding in a maintenance shaft when he overheard a conversation between the station's administrator and someone from the Zephyrian diplomatic staff. "The princess is becoming an embarrassment," said a cold Zephyrian voice. "This undignified chase after a lower species is damaging our reputation. Her father is considering ordering her to return home immediately." "Perhaps that would be best," replied the administrator, who sounded like one of the gray-skinned Novak species. "This situation is disrupting station operations. The princess claims this human has issued some kind of challenge to her honor. She says she cannot return home until the matter is resolved." "What kind of challenge?" "We are not entirely sure. Human customs are difficult to understand." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had not issued any challenge. All he had done was refuse some gifts and try to avoid diplomatic trouble. But somehow, in alien logic, this had become a matter of honor. Things got worse when the translation computer malfunctioned during another diplomatic meeting. Marcus was not there, but he heard about it from Lieutenant Part, who had been taking notes for Captain Rodriguez. "The weirdest thing happened today," Part told him as they shared a quick meal in a storage closet Marcus had converted into a hiding spot. The Zephyrian princess's advisor was trying to explain their courtship customs to our diplomats, but the translator kept saying something about claiming and ownership and hunting rights. Hunting rights? Marcus nearly choked on his emergency rations. Yeah, it was really confusing. The advisor seemed frustrated with the translation, but our people heard what they heard. "Captain Rodriguez thinks the princess might want to take you back to their planet as some kind of trophy." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. A trophy that explained everything. The gifts, the pursuit, the talk about honor and challenges. The princess saw him as some kind of prize to be hunted and captured. That night, Marcus made a decision that would make him legendary among several alien species. He decided to disappear completely. Using skills he had developed over the past week, Marcus created a life support system in the station's forgotten areas. He found an abandoned storage room in the lower levels and stocked it with food, water, and basic supplies. He tapped into the station's power grid to run a small heater and light. He even rigged up a waste disposal system that connected to the main recycling network. For the next 4 days, Marcus lived like a hermit in the bowels of the station. He only emerged for the most essential duties, and even then, he moved like a shadow. He memorized the shift changes of every guard, the traffic patterns of every corridor, and the daily routines of every crew member. His fellow humans started to worry. Captain Rodriguez sent search parties to look for him, but Marcus had become too good at hiding. Even when they found traces of his passage, a disturbed ventilation grate, a missing food ration, a brief energy signature from his tools, Marcus himself remained invisible. The aliens on the station began to speak of him in whispers. The reptilian traders expanded their betting pool to include whether Marcus was still alive. Some claimed he had somehow escaped the station entirely, while others insisted he had learned to phase through solid matter like a ghost. Princess Veltara became increasingly desperate. Her searches grew more frantic and less dignified. Marcus watched from hidden cameras as she personally crawled through maintenance tunnels, her beautiful white robes becoming dirty and torn. Her guards looked embarrassed, but they followed her orders. The princess started making mistakes. She would rush to investigate every small sound, every minor disturbance. She stopped eating regularly and slept only a few hours each night. Her advisor tried to convince her to give up, but she refused. "I will not be defeated by a human," Marcus heard her say through a ventilation grate. "If he can hide in this station, then I can find him. I am Zephyrian royalty. I do not surrender." But Marcus was beginning to realize that this was bigger than just one alien princess and her wounded pride. Word of his evasion skills was spreading beyond the station. Other ships were arriving specifically to hear stories about the phantom human who could not be caught. A delegation of military officers from the warlike Krull Empire spent 2 days studying the station's layout, trying to understand how one small human could outmaneuver trained Zephyrian hunters. They left shaking their heads in amazement. "Your species has interesting survival instincts," the Krull commander told Captain Rodriguez before departing. "This human of yours would make an excellent spy or assassin." Marcus was not sure if he should feel proud or terrified by that assessment, but the real shock came when he was overheard a conversation between 2 Zephyrian guards who were supposed to be searching for him. "The princess has not eaten in 2 days," one said quietly. "She barely speaks except to give orders about the search." "Perhaps we should tell her that the human has left the station," suggested the other. "She would know we were lying. She has some kind of sensing device that tracks his life signs. She knows he is still here somewhere. Then what do we do? She is destroying herself over this obsession. I do not know. I have never seen her like this. It is as if losing this human would mean losing everything." Marcus frowned as he listened from inside a utility panel. The guards sounded worried, not angry. They talked about the princess like they cared about her, not like loyal servants following orders. And what was this about her destroying herself? For the first time since this whole mess started, Marcus began to wonder if he had misunderstood something important. But before he could think about it too deeply, he heard footsteps approaching his hiding spot. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and prepared to run again. The game of hide and seek was not over yet. He had no idea that the princess was about to make one final, desperate move that would change everything. Marcus had achieved something that no one thought was possible. For 7 straight days, He had remained completely hidden on a space station, where a determined alien princess and her guards were actively hunting him. He had not been seen, detected, or even glimpsed by anyone who was looking for him. He had become a legend. The story spread through the station's communication, networks, and beyond. Traders carried tales of the phantom human to other systems. Military analysts studied his techniques. Some alien cultures started using his name as an example of impossible persistence. To pull a Marcus Chen became station slang for vanishing when things got difficult, but Marcus himself was just tired. Living in hidden corners of a space station was exhausting work. He had lost weight, his clothes were dirty, and he was starting to talk to himself during the long hours of hiding. Sometimes he wondered if he was losing his mind. The worst part was not knowing why this was happening. Every day, the chase continued. Every day, the princess and her people searched for him with desperate determination. But Marcus still did not understand what they wanted from him. He had created what he called the perfect system. Marcus had mapped every inch of the station that was accessible to humans. He knew which areas were monitored by security cameras and which were blind spots. He could predict foot traffic patterns hours in advance. He had even learned to recognize different people by the sound of their footsteps. His hiding places had evolved from simple storage closets to elaborate camouflaged shelters. Marcus had built a network of supply caches throughout the station, each one containing food, water, and emergency equipment. He could move from one section to another without ever using the main corridors. The aliens on the station had started treating him like a mythical creature. Some believed he had supernatural powers. Others thought he must have some kind of advanced human technology that made him invisible. A few claimed he had somehow learned to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The truth was much simpler. Marcus was just very good at not being where people expected him to be, but the constant hiding was taking its toll. Marcus had not had a real conversation with another person in over a week. He watched his fellow humans from a distance, seeing them eat meals and laugh together, and felt completely isolated. Sometimes he wondered if it would be easier to just surrender and face whatever the princess wanted. Then he would remember the conversation about hunting trophies and ownership rights, and his determination would return. No alien princess was going to claim him like a prize, no matter how pretty she was or how sad. Her guards sounded. The breakthrough in his hiding techniques came when Marcus discovered that the station's artificial gravity systems had small gaps where the field generators did not quite overlap. By carefully positioning himself in these null zones, he could float in spaces that were too small for normal hiding. It was uncomfortable and required perfect balance, but it made him effectively invisible to most scanning equipment. Marcus was hiding in one of these gravity null pockets, wedged between two massive power conduits, when he witnessed something that shook him to his core. Through a gap in the wall panels, he could see into one of the station's formal meeting rooms. Princess Veltara was there with several other Zephyrians who looked important. They were clearly not happy with her. "This madness has gone on long enough," said an older Zephyrian with elaborate silver decorations on his robes. "You have embarrassed our entire royal house with this undignified pursuit." "You do not understand," the princess replied. Her voice was hoarse, and Marcus could see that she looked exhausted. "I cannot simply abandon this. It would be a betrayal of everything I believe. Chasing a human through service tunnels like a common predator? This is what you believe in? I believe in choosing my own path. I believe in love over duty." The princess's voice broke slightly on the last word. "And I believe that he is worth fighting for, even if no one else understands." "Love?" The older Zephyrian looked shocked. "You speak of love for an inferior species? A creature that finds you so repulsive he hides from your very presence?" Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Love? The princess was talking about love? He is not inferior, the princess said firmly. He has shown skills that would impress our greatest warriors. His ability to evade capture is legendary already. And when I first met him, he showed kindness without expecting reward. Even if all of that were true, he's made his feelings clear. He wants nothing to do with you. Then I will prove myself worthy of his respect. I will show him that I am not just some pampered royal who takes what she wants. I will earn the right to speak with him. Marcus watched in horror as tears started running down the princess's face. She was crying because of him, because he had been hiding from her like she was some kind of monster. The Emperor has ordered you to return home immediately, the older Zephyrian continued. This embarrassment ends now. I will not go. Not until I have at least spoken with him properly. Then you are no longer welcome in the royal court. Your title and privileges are suspended until you come to your senses. The older Zephyrians filed out of the room, leaving the princess alone. She collapsed into a chair and began crying harder, her whole body shaking with sobs. Marcus felt sick. He had completely misunderstood everything. The princess was not hunting him like a trophy. She was not trying to intimidate or capture him. She was in love with him, and he had been treating her like an enemy. Worse, his behavior had apparently cost her everything. Her family had disowned her. Her people had abandoned her. All because she had fallen in love with a human who was too paranoid and culturally ignorant to understand what was happening. Marcus tried to move, to get to where he could help her somehow, but his position in the null gravity zone was too precarious. The slightest motion would send him floating into the power conduits, probably electrocuting him in the process. All he could do was watch as the alien princess cried alone in the empty room, mourning a love that had never even had a chance to begin. By the time Marcus managed to extract himself from his hiding spot, the princess was gone. But her tears had burned an image into his memory that he knew would never leave him. That night, as Marcus huddled in his latest hideout, he made a decision. He could not keep running forever. Sooner or later, he would have to face what he had done. But first, he needed to understand exactly what kind of mess he had created. Marcus began planning something that would have seemed impossible just days before. Instead of hiding from the princess, he was going to find her, but not to surrender. To apologize. The problem was that the princess had become almost as good at hiding as he was. She had dismissed most of her guards and stopped following her usual routines. If Marcus was going to find her, he would have to use all the skills he had learned during their strange game of chase. It was time for the phantom human to become the hunter instead of the hunted. Marcus just hoped it was not too late to fix what his fear and misunderstanding had broken. Marcus found Princess Veltara in the last place he expected, the station's observation deck, at 3 in the morning. It was the same place where she had almost caught him a week ago. The one spot he had considered his secret sanctuary for watching the stars. She was alone, sitting on the floor near the massive windows that looked out into deep space. Her beautiful white robes were wrinkled and stained. Her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders. And even from across the room, Marcus could see that she had been crying. For a moment, Marcus almost turned around and left. Confronting her felt more terrifying than all the hiding he had done. But he forced himself to step into the room, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Veltara looked up, and her eyes went wide with shock. "Marcus?" she whispered, as if she could not believe he was really there. "Hello, Your Highness," Marcus said quietly. He stayed near the door, ready to run if this went badly. "We need to talk." She stood up quickly, hope and fear warring in her expression. "Yes, we do. I have been trying to speak with you for—" "I know," Marcus interrupted. "And I owe you an apology. A big one." The princess looked confused. "You..." Apologize? But I am the one who has been chasing you through this station like some kind of wild animal. I am the one who has disrupted your work and your peace. You were chasing me because I was running, Marcus said, taking a careful step closer. And I was running because I'm an idiot who doesn't understand alien customs. Veltara's eyes filled with tears again. You were running because you found me repulsive. Because the thought of being near me was so horrible that you preferred to live like a criminal in hiding. No, Marcus said, louder than he meant to. No, that's not why I was running at all. He moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in her beautiful face, the way her hands trembled slightly. Marcus had caused this. His fear and misunderstanding had hurt someone who had never meant him any harm. Then why? She asked in a broken voice. Why did you refuse my gifts? Why did you avoid me? Why did you treat me like I was your enemy? Marcus took a deep breath and forced himself to be honest. Because I thought you were angry with me. When I refused your first gift, you looked upset, and then your guards started following me everywhere. In human culture, when powerful people get angry and start tracking you, it usually means you're in trouble. Angry? Veltara looked genuinely confused. I was not angry. I was hurt and confused. In my culture, when someone offers you their personal crystal, it means they want to court you, to try to win your love. Marcus felt his world shift. Court me? You mean like romantically? Yes. The princess wiped tears from her cheeks. Among my people, the crystal pendant is a declaration of serious romantic intent. When you refused it, I thought perhaps you needed time to consider, or that you did not understand what it meant. So I tried other approaches. More gifts, formal invitations, attempts to spend time with you. And I kept running away, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. Which must have looked like I was rejecting you personally, not just avoiding diplomatic complications. It looked like you found me disgusting. Like the very idea of my romantic interest was so offensive that you would rather live in hiding than simply tell me no directly. Marcus sat down heavily on one of the observation benches. Oh God, Veltara, I didn't know. I thought you were some kind of alien warrior princess who wanted to take me back to your planet as a trophy or a prisoner. The translation computers made it sound like you were claiming hunting rights over me. For the first time since he had entered the room, Veltara almost smiled. A trophy? You thought I wanted to mount your head on my wall? Something like that, yeah. Marcus laughed, but it was a bitter sound. I spent 2 weeks thinking you were my enemy when you actually liked me. More than liked, she said softly, sitting down on the bench beside him, careful to leave space between them. I fell in love with you, Marcus-chan, with your kindness and your clever hands and the gentle way you helped me when I dropped my ceremonial dagger at the reception. Marcus remembered that moment. It had seemed like such a small thing, just picking up something the lady had dropped and handing it back to her. He had not even thought about it afterward. That's why you love me? Because I picked up something you dropped? Because you helped someone without expecting anything in return? Because you looked at me and saw a person who needed assistance, not a princess who could reward you or punish you? Veltara turned to face him fully. Do you know how rare that is for someone in my position? Most people only see my title and my wealth. You just saw someone who needed help. They sat in silence for a while, both staring out at the stars. Marcus was trying to process everything he had learned, trying to reconcile the elegant, vulnerable woman beside him with the alien huntress he had imagined. I cost you everything, didn't I? He finally asked. Your family, your position, your home. You did not cost me anything, Veltara said firmly. I chose to pursue you despite their objections. I chose to believe that love was more important than politics. I chose to fight for what I wanted instead of accepting what others demanded. But now you have nothing. I have my freedom. I have the knowledge that I stood up for my own beliefs, and she looked at him hopefully. I have this conversation with you, which I had begun to think would never happen. Marcus studied her face in the starlight. She was beautiful, obviously, but there was something else there too. Strength, intelligence, and a determination that had kept her searching for him even when everyone else told her to give up. What happens now? He asked. I do not know, she admitted. I suppose I will have to find some way to support myself. Perhaps I can work as a translator or a diplomat for other species. My family will not take me back unless I renounce my feelings for you. And you won't do that? Would you renounce your feelings for someone you loved just because others told you to? Marcus thought about that question seriously. Would he give up someone he cared about just to make his life easier? The answer came without hesitation. No, I wouldn't. Then you understand why I cannot go home. They talked until dawn, sharing stories about their cultures, their lives, their hopes and fears. Marcus learned that Zephyrian courtship involved elaborate displays of artistic gifts and formal poetry. Veltara learned that human romance was usually much more direct and informal. So, if you had understood what my gift meant, she asked, what would you have done? Marcus considered that carefully. Probably panicked in a completely different way. I'm not exactly experienced with alien princesses falling in love with me. But would you have given me a chance? Yes, I think I would have. You're amazing, Veltara. Beautiful and smart and braver than anyone has a right to be. Any guy would be crazy not to be interested. She smiled then, the first real smile he had seen from her. Even a guy who can disappear like smoke when he wants to avoid conversation? Especially that guy, Marcus grinned back. After all, he knows how to appreciate someone who's persistent enough to keep chasing him through air ducts and waste recycling systems. As the station's artificial dawn began lighting up the observation deck, Marcus made a decision that surprised them both. Veltara, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Somewhere public, where everyone can see us together. Her eyes widened. You would do that? Even knowing it might cause diplomatic complications? I think I've caused enough complications by running away from problems, Marcus said, standing up and offering her his hand. It's time I tried facing them instead. She took his hand and stood beside him, hope shining in her ocean blue eyes. Besides, Marcus added with a grin, I hear that I'm pretty good at avoiding trouble when I need to. If our dinner causes an interstellar incident, I can always disappear again. Veltara laughed, a sound like silver bells that echoed through the observation deck. I do not think that will be necessary. After all, I am very good at finding people who try to hide from me. As they walked out of the observation deck together, Marcus realized that his reputation as the phantom human who could never be caught had become something else entirely. He had become the human who was brave enough to stop running when someone he cared about needed him to stay. And throughout the galaxy, other species would remember the story of the alien princess and the human engineer, not as a tale of pursuit and evasion, but as proof that love could bridge any gap, even between the stars.